She didn't expect the moment to define her life. It was supposed to be a simple meeting, a routine introduction, nothing more. But when his hand hovered in the air for everyone else, and skipped past hers as if she didn't exist, the room froze. The humiliation burned, but what came after cut far deeper than embarrassment. It exposed a truth most people prefer to ignore, a truth wrapped in power, privilege, and quiet cruelty. She knew this wasn't just about her anymore. It was about every woman who had ever been dismissed without a word. And what she uncovered next would shake an entire empire. She had worked her entire career to reach this room, an executive board floor suspended above the skyline, where decisions worth billions were negotiated with calm faces and firm voices. As one of the few black women in her field, she understood every step upward came with invisible weight. But she carried it anyway, balancing competence, grace, and unspoken expectations. The man who refused to shake her hand wasn't just another executive. He was the face of an empire built on influence, legacy, and the kind of quiet arrogance that allows disrespect to hide behind polished smiles. His gesture lasted less than a second, but the echo of it lingered across the conference table. Some noticed and looked away. Some didn't see at all. But she felt every heartbeat of that moment. Yet she didn't react. She didn't flinch. Years of navigating thin lines between professionalism and prejudice had taught her how to remain composed, even when her dignity was pushed aside. But inside, something shifted. Not anger, not bitterness. Something clearer, an understanding that this wasn't an isolated insult. It was a symptom of something deeper, something woven into the culture of the empire he led. She didn't know it yet, but this ordinary meeting would become the doorway to a discovery far more explosive than an ignored handshake. A discovery that could change everything for every person he'd ever believed was beneath him. In the days that followed, she replayed the moment in her mind, not out of insecurity, but out of clarity. Disrespect that public rarely stood alone. It usually had roots, patterns, a hidden history. She didn't go searching for revenge. She simply went searching for the truth. And the deeper she looked, the faster the cracks began to appear. Her role in the company granted her access to reports, audits, and performance reviews. She had built a reputation for being meticulous, the kind of person whose attention to detail saved millions in potential losses. So when she noticed discrepancies buried inside financial statements linked to his division, she didn't dismiss them. They weren't large enough to raise alarms, but they were just large enough to suggest someone was hiding something. Still, she didn't jump to conclusions. She observed quietly, studying his behavior in meetings, noticing how he dismissed certain people, how he avoided accountability with ease, how others seemed afraid to question him. The empire he controlled thrived on appearances, success measured not by integrity, but by the illusion of it. Then came the database glitch, a simple system error that temporarily exposed internal files that were usually locked behind higher authorization levels. For just a moment, she saw a folder tied to offshore entities with no clear purpose, no documentation, and no traceable business activity. When the system corrected itself, the folder vanished. But she had memorized the name. That name became her compass. She followed it through old financial trails, archived communications, and cross-department reports. Each discovery added another piece to a puzzle she didn't know she was assembling. Inflated valuations, fraudulent transfers, hidden write-offs, and money quietly rerouted through layers of corporate insulation. The more she uncovered, the more dangerous the truth became. And as the picture sharpened, she realized why he believed he could humiliate her without consequence. Men like him existed in structures built to protect them, structures that assumed silence from people like her, structures that rewarded arrogance and punished anyone who challenged the hierarchy. But she wasn't alone. A small circle of employees, people who had been overlooked, underestimated, or quietly pushed aside, had seen enough of his behavior to know something was wrong. They didn't trust each other at first, but they recognized a shared purpose. One by one, they offered her fragments of information they had been too afraid to report. A pattern emerged, so clear it could no longer be ignored. He wasn't just disrespectful. He was corrupt. and the empire he controlled was built on layers of deception ready to collapse with a single push. By the time she connected the final thread, she knew the truth wasn't just harmful, it was explosive. Enough to topple his power, damage his reputation, and freeze billions in assets. But revealing it meant stepping into a storm that could destroy her career just as easily. The question now wasn't what she had found. It was what she would do with it. The morning she decided to act, the city outside her window felt eerily still, too quiet for what she was about to set in motion. She walked into the office with the calm of someone who had already accepted the consequences. Her evidence was organized, verified, and cross-checked. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours, but her resolve was sharper than ever. The board meeting was packed. Executives settled into their seats with practiced indifference, unaware that the foundations of their empire were seconds away from cracking. He walked in last, carrying the same confidence he wore the day he dismissed her handshake. His smile was polished, self-assured, untouchable. But today he was stepping into a trap built entirely from his own secrets. She waited until the financial forecast presentation began, until his voice filled the room with projections, promises, and fabricated certainty. Then she rose from her seat, placed a sealed folder on the center of the table, and requested the floor. Her tone was steady, almost gentle, but the room felt the shift instantly. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Inside the folder was everything. The offshore accounts, the manipulated reports, the rerouted funds, the legal violations disguised as strategic reallocations. A complete blueprint of his corruption. She didn't accuse him. She didn't raise her voice. She simply laid out facts. Facts no one could escape. Facts that stripped his power layer by layer in front of the very people he believed would always protect him. He tried to interrupt, but the board had already seen enough. Their silence was no longer supportive, it was damning. Security was called before he could finish his excuses. His badge was deactivated before he reached the elevator. And by the time the meeting ended, emergency asset freeze protocols had already been triggered. Everything he built, everything he used to belittle others, started collapsing in real time. The man who refused her hand could no longer grasp anything at all. In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread farther than anyone expected. News outlets picked up the story within hours, exposing a labyrinth of fraud that had quietly fueled his influence for years. Investors panicked. Regulators launched investigations. Partners who once praised his leadership now scrambled to distance themselves from the wreckage. But for her, the aftermath was strangely quiet. No celebrations, no victory laps, just a steady, unfolding realization of what her actions had set in motion. People across the company, those who had once been invisible in the hallways, began stopping by her office. They came not with praise, but with relief. Some spoke of small humiliations they had endured. Others admitted they had known something was wrong, but never believed anyone would be brave enough to expose it. She understood their gratitude, but she also understood something deeper. This had never been just about one man. It was about the culture that allowed him to thrive. The board offered her a promotion, a higher title, a larger office. She accepted the responsibility, but not the illusion that a new position alone could fix everything. Real change, she knew, required more than rearranging names on doors. It required confronting the systems that quietly rewarded silence and politely dismissed those who didn't fit the mold. So she made a decision, one more significant than the moment she revealed the truth. She began rewriting policies, restructuring reporting lines, and creating channels where every employee, regardless of race or rank, could be heard. Her goal wasn't revenge. It was transformation. The man who once refused her hand lost his empire because of his arrogance. But she gained something far more powerful: the ability to rebuild a world he believed she would never belong to. And as the dust finally settled, one question remained. How many more empires would fall if the people they underestimated finally refused to stay silent? If the story moved you, let it be a reminder that change begins with awareness. Every voice matters, including yours. So if you believe stories like this need to be heard, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening stories just like this one. Your support helps bring these truths into the light.